Okay, so the new topic that we're going on to is social relations. So as we said in a previous class, all people are influenced by their environment, not just weak people. Would you agree with that or not? Okay, you would agree. How do the rest of you feel? People are influenced by their environment or not?
Yes.
Okay, so once you agree on that, you've just shot yourself in the foot, because now who has to take responsibility about the environment in which you find yourself? You do. So you've just lost your best excuse. It's society, it's my family, it's this, it's that. Once you recognize that you know that you're influenced by your environment, it's up to you to decide to be in a positive environment. That makes sense to you? Okay, so what would a positive environment be? What do you think a positive environment would be? So you have to first have a picture of who you are and where you want to be in life before you could determine that an environment is supportive or destructive. That makes sense? So once you have a picture of where you want to be in life, you have to put yourself in an environment that will make that happen as much as you can. And if you don't, then you're in denial about environmental influence. So now, besides very basic things like don't hang around with evil people, okay? You too will, okay? And go, if you do hang around with righteous people, Rambam, from whom I'm taking this, asks this question. Suppose you have control over what environment you're in. Under what circumstances would a person have very little control?
When they're children?
Certainly children have no control over their environment. Once you're not a child.
Someone who lacks confidence.
Mm-hmm. Okay, people are afraid to change their environment. And people don't appreciate the truth of environmental influence. All of this is there. Or they may not find an environment that's supportive. Okay, so suppose your highest desire for yourself would be what? Let's say you could press a button and turn out to be the person you want to be. What would that be? On the East Side, and in most places that you've mentioned, nobody cares if you're nice. No one's going to say, don't be nice. I don't like to hear, like, what's this please and thank you all about? Why did you help that old lady with her package? No one cares, yeah? So that's called a passive negative environment. There is such a thing as an active negative environment, where the system that you're living with chokes you. So I'm going to give you an example of this. I saw this in not Florida, in California, in LA, but I would imagine it's something that's fairly widespread in America. Gated communities. Okay, do you know what a gated community is? So, what is it? Explain to everybody what it is and why it is. So that already eliminates many, many people. Okay, they also many gated, the ones I've seen, many gated communities don't have sidewalks. So that means also that you have to have what? But not only one car, because more than one person lives in the house. You have to have several cars. Okay, clear? And they have laws against parking on the street. So what else does that mean? What else does that mean? You can't park on the street, so what does that preclude?
You have to get a garage.
What? You have your big multi-car garage. Let's say it fits 4 cars. Okay, but nobody could park on the streets. That means you can't have sleepover guests. Okay, unless they could fit in the garage. Got the picture? Okay, so what's their statement about how you live? It's not passive. What are they telling you about how you have to live if you become a member of this community?
The way that they do.
You have to live like they do, which means you have to associate with people of a certain socioeconomic level, and you have to keep out people who aren't. Okay, clear? You have to be rigid about keeping them out. Okay, so that's called an active negative community unless you're into social segregation. Okay, clear? So if somebody were to call these communities segregated, by the way, would they agree that they're segregated? No, it's like one of the great farces in contemporary life in America, where the strongest levels of segregation take place in communities that don't think that they're segregated. which is like, So in any case, if you could live in a passive negative community, how? How do you protect yourself in a passive negative community?
You have to be actively positive.
You have to be positive. You have to try to create a mini society of people who are like you, who support you. So you could live in Manhattan and you go to, you go to a synagogue once a week and you like the people there, and you go to a shiur, or the people in your building, you select the people who are going to be positive, clear? But in an active negative community, basically you have to leave if it's at all possible, because it's your life. So if you hand over control of your life to other people, the excuse, it's not my fault, doesn't work, because you know that you knowingly handed over that level of control. Does this make sense to you? Okay, so what could you do if you're stuck? This is Rambam's question now. Suppose a person could only get medical treatment in a certain place, and the place is very negative. Or they live in a country with guards at the borders, and they can't leave, and it's a negative place, like Russia during the Soviet era. So what should you do? So at that point, you have to create invisible barriers between yourself and the outside society for your own survival. So it's possible that a person could have lived, for instance, in Russia during the Soviet era, and as soon as you walk into their home, you're walking into a different kind of society. Could you understand this? It's a very, very difficult, it's a difficult game to play. Okay, so now he goes on from there, from talking about the greater society to talking about relationships. So we're going to talk about relationships to different categories of people. Okay, the relationship of Jews and non-Jews, the relationship of Jews to people who convert to Judaism, who are also Jews at this point, the relationship that you have to people who you like, the relationship you have to people who you don't like. Okay, clear? Okay, so we have to first talk about the relationship of Jews and non-Jews. So currently, although again people aren't open about this, there's a subtle goal in society to create a homogenized society, which people are basically the same. Could you see where this is the case? Give me an example of how sameness is admired. So again, the people who talk liberal will say everyone has the right to be whoever they want, but it usually, the subtle message is, as long as they're liberal like me. If they're not liberal like me, then there's something wrong with them. Do you see where that unspoken message is given? So the fact is, the Jewish views is that peoples are meant to be different. If God wanted a homogenized world, he would have created a different sort of world. So I want to give you one illustration. If you were living in the Amazon jungle, would you have to work hard to get food? No, it's where you could reach it, like stick out your hand, there's food. Okay, clear? It's easy to get food. Would you have to work hard to get basic shelter in the Amazon jungle? No, there are enough trees, okay, enough leaves, and you don't need that much. So if you live in the Amazon jungle, you're not going to have to devote your life to developing yourself technologically. You could survive without it. If you live in Finland, do you have to work hard to get food? You have to have technology. Nothing grows there. Do you have to work hard to see that you have adequate shelter? Yeah, you'll die if you're exposed. Okay, clear? So by making a world in which there are different climates, God clearly intended different people to pursue different goals. This makes sense to you? Okay, is this good or bad? Is having different goals good or bad?
Good.
It's good. Why do you think it's good?
It ensures our survival and enriches our human fabric.
Okay, it ensures survival. It also, as you said, and this is the main thing, it enriches our human fabric. So when you have people going to the Amazon with the goal of teaching people to, quote, advance themselves so they could be more like the folks in Finland, the Judaic view would be, why? This makes sense to you? Okay, so from that perspective, okay, Judaism is something, you should realize this, it's the only major religion that doesn't seek to convert other people. Okay, why not, in light of what I just said? Maybe it's okay for them not to be Jewish. Maybe that's part of the great plan. Maybe the world is meant to have many different kinds of people. Maybe they're okay as they are. Maybe it's patronizing to say, and you too could be, okay, got this? Okay, we do have expectations from other people though. Why do we have expectations? Because we do believe all people are human. So on the basis of being human, we have basic expectations. So what are these expectations? What do we view as something that you have the right to expect from any person just because they're human? So the basic rules of morality, that because we believe in people, we'll say that all people could keep. So the first one is don't commit murder. So why should somebody decide not to commit murder? Give me a reasonable definition of murder, by the way, because that's tricky.
Intentionally harming someone to kill.
Okay, so suppose you have a terrorist on a plane. He's threatening to blow it up. And you happen to be a sharpshooter. Okay, there are 780 people on the plane. You could kill him in a minute. Is that murder? Okay, so that's killing for sure, but the question is murder and killing absolutely the same. So most of us would say self-defense, and in this case it's other defense, not just self-defense. It's different. It's its own category. The Judaic definition of murder is killing someone who's of no threat. Okay, does that make sense to you? Why would anybody ever kill somebody who's of no threat to them? Does this happen in society that people kill people who are of no threat? Okay, so give me an example under what circumstances that would happen.
Getting robbed, or break an entry.
Okay.
Someone's robbing you, just wants to take what you have.
Right, so often they'll kill because they want to be sure that you won't.
Put them in jail.
Right. So they think that they're defending themselves, but in fact they initiated this whole interaction. But there are other times. What about euthanasia? Is the 95-year-old person a threat to anybody? No. Okay, but so the Torah would say don't kill this person, but in society there are people who would have no trouble with it. Okay, clear? Okay, is a baby born with multiple defects a threat to anybody? Are there places in the world where babies like that won't survive? For sure. Okay, clear? So the Judaic view is that any human being could not murder. Does that make sense to you? Because they're human. Tell me something else any human being should be able to do. Because they're human. Steal. If you value your own possessions, it's not that much of a jump to figure out that somebody else also values their possessions. Give me a reasonable definition of theft.
Taking something that's not yours without permission.
Right. So that means that you have to believe in ownership, which again in some societies is that very wavy. Very wavy indeed. Like if I have it, it's mine. Okay. I once, this happened to a friend of mine. It was such a bizarre thing. So she was manning a booth at a used clothes fair, and she put down her bag next to her, and a man picked up her pocketbook. So she said, "That's mine," and he said, "No, it's mine." He just walked off. I mean, she stopped him, but like this is, in his mind, it was like he came from a different culture. If you put it down, it's like, you know, whoever picks it up, that's who owns it. Okay. What?
What culture is that?
I don't want to defame specific cultures. Okay. But okay, this is clear? Okay, tell me something else people could figure out on their own without thinking too much. How about ripping a limb off a living animal? Is that a reasonable expectation that a human being shouldn't do this? Okay. Do people do this? Yeah. Under what circumstances? When do people do this? It's called hunting. Okay, we're oftentimes hunting for sport. I'm not talking about hunting for food where they kill the animal. But hunting for sport, often the animal is left dying and people just sort of, the dogs tear it apart. It's quite brutal. Okay, clear? Another thing. Having some kind of a justice system. Why do all societies create some kind of a justice system? And some systems are better and some systems are worse. And how would you know to do this? So we all start out in life as children. Is that true? Do children need someone to defend them?
Yes.
Absolutely. So everyone knows what it is to be weak and defenseless. So because of this, anybody should have enough feeling for being human to see that people who are weak and defenseless have some kind of recourse. So society has to have some kind of justice system. Do some societies not have justice systems or have very bad ones? Absolutely. So that's a human deficiency in the society. There's also an expectation that people not worship idols, because if you made the idol, how could you possibly think it made you? There's an expectation that people see the creator in a positive light, not try to force people into blasphemy or atheism. Does this make sense? So everything that we expect from other people, we feel that it's reasonable for other people to expect from us. This makes sense to you? So I mean, as a Jewish person, we believe that these basic laws of morality have to be kept. And I want you to hear this because this is a big idea. Even if the other person doesn't. So that means if somebody is no threat to you, you can't kill them, even if they have no problem killing people who are no threat. If somebody owns a possession, even if they're a thief, you can't steal from them. Okay, clear? If someone has a relationship, adultery is on one of the things. You can't seduce them, even if they're basically immoral and go from person to person to person. Okay, so in history, that means the Jews don't believe in having reciprocal relationships. We have to keep basic moral relationships even with people who are not keeping that. So relationships don't have to be reciprocal. Okay, this is clear? So I'll give you the political implications for this in Israel, where this is pretty well kept. Not 100%, but pretty well kept. Are vast. So if you were to go to the hospital, if any of you had to be in the hospital here for any reason, to the emergency room or anything, if you were to go to the hospital, you would see that many of the patients are Arabs and a significant number of the doctors are Arabs. If you were to go to the hospital in Gaza, would you see Jewish patients or doctors? No. So some people will say, well, why should we treat them differently than they treat us? And the answer is because we want to retain our humanity. Do you understand this? Okay, another example. Unfortunately, I'm going to give you examples from here. In the culture of Palestine, not all Arabs, Palestinian Arabs specifically, is one in which honor killings are encouraged. Do you know what honor killings are? You all know that? Yes? Okay. So you can't say that this person who's a murderer, who killed his sister because his sister was in an illicit relationship, that therefore they're all just like garbage, him, his sister, the whole crowd of them, and I don't have to take them seriously as humans. It doesn't work that way. Okay, clear? So guarding your own humanity is crucial. Okay, we don't demand from ourselves that we have relationships with other groups of people that transcend these basic laws of humanity. So this goes back again to not converting other people and not having expectations from ourselves. We have to treat other people as though they're in the framework of those who do mitzvot. That makes sense to you? So you don't have to give your non-Jewish neighbor Shabbos food. You don't have to do any of this. It's nice if you do, but you have no obligations beyond these 7 mitzvot. Okay, this is clear? So if we believe that everybody has their place in the world and not everybody has to be Jewish and it's disrespectful to convert people, why do we allow conversion? If we say that people, it's Hashem's providence that made someone, let's say, live in Finland. So we'll say that's their place. Why should I say take them into another place? Why don't we say, you be successful in your life, I'll be successful in mine. So you said free will, but nobody likes this, by the way. Free will has limitations. Do you realize this? So I'll give you an example of this. Could I choose to be a ballerina by next year? Is that a possible choice? This is not a possible choice. So free will has its limits. Could you see where this is so? So the question is, why would we say that somebody could will themselves to be a member of the Jewish people? So in order to answer that question, and you say it is free will, I want to talk about the process of conversion. Are you a convert? No. Okay, you're a born Jew? Okay. But do you know, okay, in India you must know converts. Yeah. So here's the process. A person wants to convert, okay? So who will they usually approach? A rabbi, okay? So the rabbi's role is in the initial meeting to tell them they're okay the way they are. They don't have to convert. It's not like Christianity will say, great, you'll be saved, okay? Be who you are. If the person says, but I don't want to stay who I am, I want to go further than this, so the rabbi's job is to introduce them to the basic rules of Judaism. This is what Judaism is. It's not just eating fish on Friday night. Okay? Oh no. Okay, whatever. Okay. Once they know the laws of Judaism and the basic practices, if they still want to convert, there's another meeting. Okay? So up to meeting number 2. In meeting number 2, the rabbi has to inform them that some of the practices are expensive. People are funny when it comes to money. Have you noticed this? What are some Judaic practices that are expensive? Kosher food. What's the difference between kosher meat and regular meat in terms of price? So at least a third more expensive, sometimes twice as expensive. Okay? But that's nothing. Do you know what the real expense is? You have to educate your kids. What do you think school tuition cost? What do you think, in America, what do you think school tuition costs per year per child in a Jewish school?
We have a school that's like 30,000 a year.
Okay. So which school is that? Eula. Okay, there's schools that are a lot cheaper. It's interesting, there's an inverse relationship religiously. You would think that the less religious schools would be cheaper and the more religious schools more expensive because they have more teachers. But no, the more religious the school is, the cheaper it is because the more unwilling they are to turn anybody down. But even the least expensive school is $5,000 a year. So if you have 4 kids, that means what? That's $20,000. That's a lot of money, is it not? Okay, clear? Most schools charge more. Okay, so the conventional thing in people who are Jewish and who care about their kids' education, both parents work. One parent basically is paying for tuition and health insurance, and the other parent is paying for everything else. Okay, clear? Okay, so if the person still wants to be Jewish, okay, the next thing you have to tell them, next meeting, you're supposed to space the meetings if possible, you're going to be a member of a persecuted people. And you have to tell them, show them the pictures, tell them the history. Okay, clear? If after that they want to convert, then they're crazy. So we say, oh, you're one of us. Okay, clear? That makes sense to you? Okay, so from that perspective, conversion isn't so simple, but it shows that the person has what we would call a Jewish soul. If this is what speaks to them, if this is what they want, then there's something in here that's Jewish already. It's just looking for a frame. This is clear? Okay, so because of this, conversion is allowed. And there are 2 more things. After the rabbi accepts the convert, the prospective convert, 2 more things have to happen. Do you know what they are? So one is immersion in the mikveh, and for a man, it's circumcision. Okay, clear? So what's this immersion in the mikveh about? It has to do with renewing and redefining yourself. So this is when the person would take on a Jewish name. Okay, circumcision has to do with this, that the man is saying that religious consciousness exists in every possible limb and organ in the body, which is a big statement. Okay, clear? Once a person converts, do you treat them the same or different than a born Jew? They already did this. They learned the mitzvahs, they joined the club. Are they treated the same or different? It says 48 times in the Torah, love the convert. Okay, that's a lot of repetition. So you have to treat a convert well. And there are laws about this. You're not allowed to say anything derogatory about the people from which they came. It should be like anybody with sense should know this, but people are like stupid. So you don't tell Polish jokes to a Polish convert, black jokes to a black convert. You don't do any of this. Did you hear the one about? No. You don't say anything derogatory about their culture. You have to give them precedence in all areas. So because most converts don't have supportive families, if you're, let's say, on the tuition committee in a school and you can give only so many discounts, the convert comes first. Okay, this is clear? Okay, so that's with non-Jews and converts. Clear? Now, your fellow Jew. So it says in the Torah, love yoreya. Yoreya means, it's a word that doesn't have a good English parallel, by the way. It means somebody who's your friend. The word for friend is usually chaver, but who has a relationship to you. So yoreya is maybe companion, maybe something closer to that. You have to love your friend in that sense the way you love yourself. So what does that mean? It means that when somebody is part of your community, you have to feel a bond with them. So in other religions, there's also a goal of feeling bond with other people, but there are no halachot, there are no specifics. So I'm going to tell you next class is specifically, you want to consider yourself to be a person who loves other people. How do you do this concretely? Okay. Any questions on this class? So that's it for now.